Good evening, folks. My name is John, and I want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Today, this is very exciting. This is Hovering Over the Deep, and my wife is joining me this evening. Now, it's kind of funny because I'm talking in the microphone, and she's looking across from me, and we don't do this. So it's kind of interesting to have actually somebody on the other side of me watching me speak, and I feel kind of silly doing it. So anyways, hi, wife. This is my wife, Angel.
Hello.
How are you today?
Doing pretty good.
I'm glad to hear. We spent all day together, so it's quite fantastic. We spend every day together.
We spend every day together.
It's wonderful.
I have no complaints.
I'm pretty happy about it. And one of the nice things that we get to do every single day is part of our marriage, and we're very blessed to be able to do this, is we're able to go on walks every single day. And I think I talk to my wife more than I talk to anybody else, which is saying a great deal because part of what I do day to day is I talk to people.
You do talk to a lot of people.
I talk to a lot of people, but I talk to you more than I talk to anybody else for certain, easily. And one of the things that we kind of discovered is that it's really good to be able to kind of fellowship or commune with one another. And so we usually go for about about an hour-ish, half hour, 40, somewhere like...
Yeah, we walk for about an hour.
Walk for about an hour, just kind of like nice trail through the woods. And we do it before we go to the gym together, of course. And realistically speaking, my wife and I, we spend more time together than I think most married couples really do. We run a business together. We do everything together. It's just we're together all the time. We're traditional mom and pop business owners. And so we're always together. But so one of the interesting things that comes up with these conversations that we have is that sometimes we get to bounce some ideas off each other. Now, of course, if you've been listening to my podcast for however long I've been doing this, I talk about a number of subjects. Now, my wife, however, she is probably far more brilliant than I am, and she definitely has an interesting way of looking at things. And the otof day, the reason I wanted to invite her onto this, and she was so gracious enough to join me, was that the other day, during our walks, we were kind of having this delightful conversation that was kind of going along stories. Now, for my wife and I, we're really big into stories. We love stories, right? She's taking a sip of her tea. She wasn't paying attention. Pay attention. This is important. We're recording. This is interaction. We love stories, right?
Yes, we love stories.
We love stories. And what's really cool about stories is sometimes you get to look at things from like maybe a sideways perspective. One of the most, I think, famous ones, or at least more well-known one, would be when Jordan Peterson looked at Pinocchio, right? And he kind of like did this whole long lecture series about like the analogy of Pinocchio. And then there's other ones that are out there that are kind of interesting. You see the alternative fan theories of like these cartoon shows that we grew up with. Off the top of my head, even though I never really watched it, was Rugrats. Was that like what everything was all in Angelica's head or something like that?
Yeah, she was an abused child, and to get away from the trauma of living in a neglectful household, she invented a bunch of characters, I guess, and the Rugrats that she then went on adventures with and had different things happen to.
Yeah. My particular favorite fan theory is the one about Grease. And I love to piss with my mother about this one because she loves Grease. And I'm like, the whole thing about Grease was actually, what was her name? Sandy, I think it was. She actually died. And the whole thing was just her kind of reliving her last year of high school before she actually floated off into the sky with John Travolta in the hot rod at the end of the movie. And the whole thing was actually, when they're talking about, he came splashing around, kicking around, and whatever. That was actually her drowning. So the beginning of the movie starts with her drowning. And her kind of life flashing before her eyes, and here comes Danny. He's John Travolta. He's jumping in and he's trying to save her, but he doesn't actually save her. She dies, and I think that's kind of one of the ones that kind of sticks with me the most for some reason. It's kind of morbid, but
that's very morbid.
It's morbid, but it's funny, And sometimes when you think about these things, they are fun. Anyways, so what happened is we were talking on one of our walks, and my wife, Angel, she came up with this really delightful thought about The Little Mermaid. And I don't want to speak too much for her, of course. I think I've spoken enough. But what were we talking about? Like, I think part of it was like personal reflection on life.
No, we just started walking, and I literally just brought it up. I remember we were at the other track that we go to sometimes, and just as we started walking, I said, so The Little Mermaid is an allegory about how a woman has to self-differentiate from her mother of origin to ultimately, be united to her spouse, her husband. And yeah, so it's just, again, you were saying, it was inspired by Jordan Peterson taking the story of Pinocchio. Now, this is specifically the Disney versions. I know the Hans Christian Andersen version of The Little Mermaid is slightly different. It doesn't end obviously with your typical Disney and the guy gets the girl and they live happily ever after. So this is specifically kind of based on the Disney version of The Little Mermaid and the events that happen in the Disney version of The Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid.
And Disney's really great for that. Disney, I mean, I wish I could be Disney. I wish I could, destroy and wreck franchises as much as they have in the past couple of years. Of course, they're coming out with a new Little Mermaid, and I'm not even going to comment on any of that because at this point, I don't care what Disney really does. I'm sure it's going to be a financial success like, all the other live-action movies that they've made. Which have been nothing but atrocious. But anyways, but as a thought, it's really fascinating when you started to think about that, because what we got? We got the cast of characters. So we've got Ariel. She's a coming of age young girl.
So we have the Little Mermaid, who's 16. We know
16.
that Triton is her father. She has a whole bunch of
single dad.
Single dad. Well, there is a theory that Triton and Ursula were married at one point, which is important because then that's how Ursula becomes the mother figure.
Interesting.
Well,
don't get ahead. Just and who else do we have?
You have Ariel, you have Flounder, you have Sebastian, and then you have Ariel's sisters. Notice that they are also all single. They're all still living at home, right? Because they're all still there. They're older than her. I think there's this sense where she is the youngest. So she has all of these older sisters who are still living at home with the dad, with Triton.
Which is good because we like good, strong father figures.
Yeah, and Triton is certainly a good, strong father figure, but the role of the father figure is not the archetype that we're necessarily going for, trying to critique in this particular story. In this particular story, the father figure kind of does everything right. In a lot of cases, it's not the father's fault that there is a failure to launch on the part of Ariel or her sisters, as we will come to see.
Well, if he's a good father, he wouldn't let anyone touch his daughters.
Or at least until somebody worthy comes along.
Right. which is really what I think. I hear a lot of people say it's like, oh, I don't need no man. It's like, well, no, you don't, but maybe your children do. Young men need to see the man that they want to grow into, and young women need to see the man that they would aspire to be with, somebody who's strong and honorable and decent. And likewise, in the ideal, young men need to see how a man is to treat his woman, his wife, and a young man ought to see, ideally, the kind of woman that would be a good suitor for him. So it's kind of like this interesting balance by example. And so, and I think it's very interesting how you did this. So where do you want to go with this?
So let's start at the beginning. So when we first meet the Little Mermaid,
because I don't know this story as well as you do.
And this is the interesting thing. This is why I was thinking about it, because when I was a small child, The Little Mermaid was the one Disney movie that we went back to again and again and again. I probably watched the Disney version of The Little Mermaid several dozen times over the course of being in elementary school as a small child. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was the bee's knees. So I think I got to the point where I could literally like play the whole movie through in my head. I knew it that well. I knew, all the songs, all the different parts.
Show you. Oh wait, no, that was Aladdin.
So let's start at the beginning. When we first meet Ariel, the Little Mermaid, right? She's still living with her father, and I think one of the very first introduction songs is, I wish I could be part of your world, and she's singing in her cave full of stuff, trinkets from above, in on the land. Which, as I was thinking to myself the other day, I'm like, that's interesting. Because what do we see children do? They oftentimes play with toys that mimic things that they're going to eventually do in the adult world. Little girls play with baby dolls. Boys play with, hammers and Tonka trucks and things like that.
Oh, how gender normative of you.
So in a lot of cases, I guess a girl can play with a Tonka truck, or you met somebody whose daughter drove monster trucks,
yeah,
right?
I know.
So,
that was cool. Like when that, just a side note. So, and again, our business, we meet all sorts of people, and this guy comes in, and we were just talking. This big burly dude, and him and his friend just wanted a moment to relax, of respite, and he said that I was talking to him, and I was like, what are you doing? Then he started saying, he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, you got kids? He's like, yeah. I'm like, what do they do? He's like, my daughter drives monster trucks, and I'm like, wait, like Bigfoot, like Gravedigger, and he's like, yeah, and I'm like, wow, that's cool. And she does like the whole like 100, like he showed me a picture of her like 50 feet in the air, and insane the fact that his daughters, he had two daughters, but it was the one who actually pursued it as a career. Just really incredible story.
Yeah, you don't see that every day.
Anyways, yeah. So it was just little.
So
side
when we meet the Little Mermaid, we meet Ariel. She's where a lot of early adolescence, late childhood people are, children are, that they're not quite adults, but they're curious about the adult world. Just like Ariel is curious about, what is this world that is on the other side of the ceiling of my world, which is in fact the ocean ceiling, right? You think if you're a fish underwater, oh, well, the ceiling of my world, and then you break through and you're like, wow, there's a whole new world. And that's, so we meet Ariel, she's singing about how she wants to, go up and be a part of this world that she's really curious about. Then you move forward to sort of the next scene, and I think the next song is with her friend Flounder, who is the perpetual childhood buddy, right? He's safe. He's not going
he's
to...
He's the emotional support boyfriend.
He's the emotional support boyfriend. He's the childhood friend who's of the opposite gender, right? He's safe. He's never going to, be boyfriend or husband material because he's just the safe childhood friend. And that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
When you're a child. The other part, too, that I thought was interesting is that, what are mermaids? They're half human, half fish, right? Just like adolescents are sort of half child, half adult. They're trying to self-actualize. They're trying to self-differentiate from their families of origin to fully become, as Ariel wants to, human. So we have this next song and dance. How what's the lobster's name? Sebastian. Under the sea, and he's pretty much telling Ariel why she should stay under the sea, or in this case, forever stay a child.
Interesting.
Right? Forever stay in sort of the loam of childhood. And this actually gets even deeper because the ocean does represent, from an evolutionary perspective, humanity's childhood. That's where we came from. So the scientists say, right?
So evolutionists.
So in a lot of cases, the ocean represents the unformed, the chaotic, the primeval, the like I said, the undifferentiated, which is what childhood is. And
that's interesting because the water metaphor, that even from that perspective of water being birthed out of water, without getting too biblical about it, born again, you are baptized effectively, you are being rebirthed again. Of course, when a woman's water breaks, it's amazing.
Well, we come into the world through water. Yeah. And there is a sense where water represents different periods of the growing up process in a lot of cases.
It's a delightful metaphor. It's fantastic. So Sebastian is what? He's a youth leader?
I don't know.
Just always stay a kid with the pizza parties and just always have fun, kid. He's the relatable one. So
Sebastian,
Arrow's got her safe emotional support boyfriend, and
who is Flounder the fish, right? Flounder's not a merman. Flounder is fully fish, fully child. So he is that again, that childhood friend. Sebastian is the sort of the siren call, stay a child forever. I always remember in the 80s and 90s, I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. So Sebastian is kind of, well, why would you want to grow up? Why would you want to go up on land? Isn't life grand down in the ocean? Stay down here where you have, you can languish forever in this perpetual
the Peter Pan
adolescence.
Syndrome.
And the Peter Pan syndrome. Absolutely. Yep.
Or in her case would be like Wendy, I guess.
Well, Wendy at least kind of wanted to grow up, from what I understand.
She became the de facto mother to Peter.
Right.
Which was interesting. Anyways, that's another allegory for another time.
Right. So, what happens to the Little Mermaid, and like what happens to all adolescents, right? They do eventually break through. Yeah. But here's where we enter the toxic mother figure, the Ursula figure.
The Ursula figure.
Now, I think there was a sense where, and you don't get this in the Disney movie, I'm not sure if it comes in the Hans Christian Andersen original story, but that Ursula was in fact the wife of Triton, and there was some kind of, falling out, and that's why we don't see them living together. Now, I don't know if that would have made Ursula Ariel's actual mother. Again, they don't really get into that in either the Disney movie or the Hans Christian Andersen book. but she is somewhat motherly. She's very voluptuous. She, has, a very curvy body, as you would see, of a mature, matronly woman.
True. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was, again, as I was trying to break this down in my head of all the different allegories, I thought, isn't it interesting? What is it that Ursula demands of Ariel in order for her to become human? Her voice. And, there's such deep symbolism in that, where now she cannot advocate for herself, right? You literally see the mother figure, and again, you have an octopus, right, with the tentacles and grasping and holding on to.
Putting your fingers and hands in every little controlling aspect.
Right.
Instead of being like, look, hey, you know what? And I think of course, you and I can't speak entirely of this, but because we've dealt with a lot of young people, there is something kind of heartbreaking, I think, about when you see like a young woman and it's like, she kind of goes off onto her and it's like, oh, I remember when she was, and now she's, that time is over. And I think you do see that, and we can attest, and we have seen that many times, how a mother has been like just completely invasive, like, and not in a healthy way, like in some serious unhealthy ways, to the point of like nothing that can be done is good enough or right enough or anything. It is just all flat out control of every aspect, and we've seen it in a number of families.
Well, that's why I think Ursula is the perfect metaphor in this case.
Yeah,
the mother figure, Ursula, is punishing what should be a very natural process for a young woman wanting to know about this thing called adulthood, and also inspired, of course, by Eric. Right, Prince Eric,
Prince Eric. He is the. Sorry. I was getting excited.
Oh, we'll get there. Well, it's just what is one thing that draws women to want to become full mature adults is, having a husband, having a relationship, and being married, and then, of course, producing children. So here we have Ursula, the toxic motherhood, punishing what should be a natural process in the adolescent Ariel, who wants to explore the land, adulthood, because she meets a guy, that she wants to go after. So instead of encouraging Ariel, Ursula, the toxic mother figure, steals her voice.
Right.
So she almost enters adulthood handicapped. And this reminds me of a very particular young woman who we've recently had some unfortunate things happen to, where in a lot of cases, when you have these toxic mothers, they do, in a sense, steal their daughter's voice. They steal their capacity to function well in the adult world. They steal their capacity to be able to advocate for themselves, to have functioning, healthy psyches. And what do we see Ursula doing? She steals Ariel's voice in exchange for, all right, well, fine. You want to go on land? You want to enter this adult world? You want to chase after your potential spouse, suitor, significant other? And that's kind of one of the things that galvanizes her, right? Is I think Eric was in a shipwreck and she saves him from drowning. And so we almost have the archetypal male plunged into the loam of the primeval adolescent, which hastens the awakening of the young adolescent Ariel to be like, wow, I've sort of always just dreamed of this thing called land or adulthood. Now I have impetus to want to explore it and to want to go and actually be a part of that world, even to the point where I, in this case, make a deal with the devil, Ursula, to, get there quicker by giving up my voice, by giving up my ability to self-actualize.
And what's interesting, too, and you comment, I don't believe you commented just now, but when we were on the trail talking about this, you also commented that Ariel, being surrounded by the toys of adolescence, and the whole idea is stay with your toys, stay with these fun little trinkety places, stay with all this stuff,
because what's her cave made up of? It's all these trinkets, that from the land, from the adult world that she doesn't use, because there's the fork that she's combing her hair with, and it's like, well, that's not how you use it. And again, how many adolescents we see who are given the tools of adulthood and they don't know how to use them because they've never been taught how.
And how many adults do we see that are still befuddled by the trappings of mature adulthood? And they're still, dare I say, floundering. I didn't mean to make a pun like that. That was terrible. But it's interesting because, what does she starts to design. And I don't want to get into the whole sexual awakening or anything, like any nonsense like that. But there could
make a case for that. But I wasn't going down that train of thought.
But it is interesting where now all of a sudden, you could say the Barbie dolls are no longer good enough. The playhouse is no longer good enough. Now it's a matter of, she sees Eric. Now, you've got the two desires. She's got the desire of like, I just want to go out, but something's holding her back. Because up until that point, it was just her flitzing around, just being like, yeah, this is nice. And what is this? I don't know.
Well, that's why the introduction of Eric and saving him was the thing that galvanized her.
And so what you see, and just kind of a recapitulation, saying it a different way, it's that desire of, wow, real adventure. I can be a companion on this adventure. This is a man who is going to take me, and he's going to take me away from the kiddie stuff, the toys. I want something visceral. I want something real. And that's
actually what we see. Yeah. So Ariel, trades her voice for some legs, and she's washed up on the shore. And who finds her is Eric's. I don't know if it's Prince Eric who finds her, but somebody finds her, and so. Again, the adolescent who's suddenly thrust into the adult world, having no idea what they're doing, all disheveled, and then they're taken into the adult world. And going back to the fork thing, she always thought it was I don't remember what she called it in the movie.
What is this thing?
Yeah, there's some funny name they gave. So she thought you brushed your hair with it, and so they sit down to this fancy dinner when she gets into the castle and is given nice clothes, and she starts combing her hair at the fork, and everyone at the dinner table is kind of looking at her like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
but isn't that symbolic of when, again, children make that transition to adulthood and they're curious and confused and they don't really know how to act in the adult world, and the adults, through sort of that instructive condescension,
right,
show them how to function, and she's shown actually how to use the fork that she used to think was a hairbrush.
And it goes to show, actually, as an observation, I remember how I used to sit at the table when I was young. I was a child. And now I think about how I sit at the table now. What a stark difference. It's kind of like the age-old adage, like, what are all of these, what is all this silverware for? It's like, well, it's really easy. You start from the outside and you work your way inward. It's you use the outside silverware and then you move inward. And it's what it's for. And just I guess you could say, in polite society, a lot of people don't really think about sitting at the dinner table as being any kind of thing other than I'm just going to, shovel food into my mouth. And after a hard day of, like, for example, doing stuff today, it's like, yes, just please give me a steak. I'm not really interested in these things. But I think with, like, the ideas of, just kind of piggybacking off of that for a moment, just a little sidebar, how often we don't even bother to think about the parlance or the polite societal ways of actually just doing something as simple as eating a meal in public. I just don't think about that.
Which is a
little side note.
Behavior that small children should learn how to do sooner rather than later, so that their parents can actually take them out into public and they aren't little hellions.
That is a message for anyone who has ever worked in the restaurant industry.
Yes, and please don't bring Cheerios because they end up getting dropped on the floor and ground up. Just let your kid eat what's there. They don't need to constantly be shoving Cheerios in their face.
Yeah, I need my Cheerios. Anyways.
But this is where we get to the more insidious aspect of the toxic mother Ursula figure. Right. So she begrudgingly trades, in our metaphor of how Ariel's, this figure is a adolescent going into adulthood to try to get a spouse. So she begrudgingly allows her daughter to become an adult and start doing adult things. However, she keeps her voice back so she can't fully self-actualize. Well, the whole thing was, if she can get Eric to fall in love with her for within 3 days, I think it was, then, or maybe it was longer. It was a certain period of time. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could go into the metaphor.
We should have watched this before just to have it more fresh.
I remember the whole movie.
I'm amazed.
I know. Well, I said I really enjoyed it when I was a child. But so Ariel has a certain amount of time to make Eric fall in love with her. And then she gets her voice back and they live happily ever after. However, if she doesn't, then she turns back into a mermaid, and, deep symbolism in there. If you don't, as a budgeting adult, self-actualize and, get the guy and who helps you enter into that adult world, you go back into the adolescence. You go back to the ocean. You become part fish, part human, right? Just like all of her sisters who, again, were all single, just kind of hanging out. Mm-hmm. So maybe there was a whole, I don't remember how many there were, like 6 or 7 of them, who are examples of they never launched. These are, adolescents who came up to the, went up to bat and then just failed. And then they sank back down into the ocean and then will stay forever in that weird limbo between childhood and adulthood. So what happens, this is where we see, again, even more insidious aspect of Ursula, where, not only has she stolen Ariel's voice, she then transforms herself into a woman and tries to steal Eric and then puts him under a spell using Ariel's voice. So quite literally, and then they're about to get married and Eric's put under the spell and he's about to walk down the aisle with Ursula.
Right.
I mean, so now we have the toxic mother figure literally trying to steal the potential spouse of the child.
Well, and isn't that interesting? I think that resonates more now today. Because what do we really see? We see all of these old celebrities, people that you and I grew up with, that were like, glamorous and gorgeous and all of this, they were the it. And now it's like, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but like Madonna, it's like, what are you doing? You are not this woman anymore. You are now,
instead of aging gracefully they're just trying to steal the youth of their children. It's like, I had my time. But it's now your time to be at the altar with Prince Eric and being married. And it's
interesting. And of course we could. Don't think that the male celebrities don't get that. They don't get a pass either, because there's some male celebrities out there. Leonardo DiCaprio, I think he gets a new girlfriend every time she turns 25, and he just keeps getting older. I think Dennis Quaid is another one who married and I'm not going to begrudge somebody for marrying somebody significantly younger. I certainly won't do that. I mean, I'm not going to do that. That whatever. If you happen to find somebody who is, to your fancy, and, it works. I mean, it's dangerous, but, hey. But it's interesting because Ursula, going back to that toxic motherhood, she can't let go of who she was. And I'd be willing to bet.
Well, and she's not going to let her daughter have that.
Yeah, she's not going to let her daughter have it. So now all of a sudden you have this insane jealousy. But I'll bet, we can work this in here, is that the form that she took was an echo of who she once was in her younger, more beautiful years, back when, going along the thought process that Triton was her husband.
Well, and this is where we get to the even deeper, more archetypal symbolism, because Ursula's whole plan the entire time was to steal Triton.
Yeah.
Which again, you have the, masculine archetypal symbol of the Triton, that which pierces and penetrates, being stolen by the archetypal feminine. And then what happens? She becomes this giant, monstrous octopus thing. Right. So you have the all-consuming mother, which again is very, very deeply symbolic. Again, the mother who, when you give birth, there is that separation, but the toxic mother wants to reabsorb. She wants to take back in. Yeah. And so when you see this giant octopus who has stolen the archetypal masculine, which if you remember in the movie, Triton turns into this little tiny worm, right? So almost deeply symbolic of when men have their masculinity stolen by overbearing, overwhelming, toxic motherhood femininity. Yeah. They're kind of emasculated, right? And almost castrated in a way. They have their power, their generative power stolen, taken by this toxic mother Ursula figure, who then blows up and grows into this ginormous, horrible monster. Again, the toxic mother who wants to reabsorb and consume rather than give and let go of the life. And then we come to the really neat point where, and this is again kind of the crux of the matter, that women cannot become women and make that transition, I think, as successfully without the husband. And this is where you have Prince Eric coming in and saving the day by doing what to Ursula? He literally penetrates her with this ship, which is what men do, right? I mean, that's the epitome of masculinity.
He pierces her in the heart.
Is
he kills her heart.
Yep.
Well, and that's not to say that we. I mean,
actually, if you want to go deeper, I think he pierces her in the stomach again, where the womb is, and again the seat in the center of motherhood. But I can't remember specifically where she gets pierced by the ship that Eric's, to try to save everyone. And so this is where it really comes.
We're not getting into Oedipus, Electra, or
no. This has nothing to do with those Freudian complexes where the father's in love with the daughter and the mother wants to. That's. I mean, I suppose you can make a case for that, but really, what it comes down to, and it's really brought it home for me how, in my life and my marriage to you for the last 20 years, I've recognized it's been hard. It's been really difficult.
I'm not easy to live with.
I have my moments as well. That's why you both work at it. We
Yeah.
both work at it.
Well,
But
I think, yeah. I'm sorry.
I would have not been able to launch or self-actualize or become the woman that I am if it weren't for you.
Yeah.
And that the feminine needs the masculine. The, girl child woman needs the man, the husband, to help bring her into the world. Ariel needed Eric to literally save her and bring her into adulthood. Sure. And so that was I thought, the overarching message of this symbolic tale and telling of the Little Mermaid, and some toxic motherhood thrown in there as well.
And to actually when you and I first met, I would actually say in a lot of cases, I did steal you. I think I did all of the right things. I just did them all entirely wrong.
Well, in a lot of cases, my own mother has been a type of Ursula figure who
Ouch.
only begrudgingly allowed her children to go into adulthood but kept our voices. And in a particular sibling's case, really kept a lot more than their voice.
Well, yeah.
And
let's be careful with that one. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to listen, but whatever.
In a particular sibling's voice, or in a particular sibling's case, kept more than just
their voice.
Their voice. And so there really was a sense where you did have to pierce the octopus.
I did, yeah,
if you will.
And again, we have to be careful with that, because I know somebody's listening is like, oh, so you're saying that the woman can steal the man's trident? Well, actually, maybe in a sense there is, because this is kind of the flip side of our Western society, and I can't speak on the rest of society or the world, but there is this sense where, and it's a sense of duty, I think, that kind of came out of, like, say, World War II, and it just kind of carried on with us, where men are just told to shut up, do the job, hold back the tears, and just do it, and then you can finally let go when nobody's paying attention. Remember that we used to watch 24. Nobody's going to catch the reference, but there was this great scene where, after the whole show was done and over with, I think it was like season 1 or 2 or whatever, Jack Bauer is literally just breaking down in his car because he's just emotionally and mentally burnt out, and he's like, I've just seen so much today that no one human being will ever see in their lifetime, and I saw it all here today. And he finally breaks down. But it is interesting because that, I guess you could say, emasculation in a sense. Men are always, we're told that any type of expression is bad. You're only allowed to express yourself emotively if you're on a stage, in a microphone, or with a guitar, synthesizer maybe. That's the only time you're allowed to be emotive. No other time like that. And I think with going back to the Prince Eric, he showed passion. And I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that, a boyfriend needs to slaughter the mother and the father. Not by any, no, good Lord, no. But in a meta sense, he does need to conquer. He needs to kind of conquer in a way that which, and I think rightfully so. I think there's a rightfully so aspect to it, because here's the thing. In a lot of cases, the male suitor needs to conquer the father figure. He needs to be the one to win dad over, because dad...
Well, he needs to show that he can be just as strong as dad and provide and support for the daughter.
Or ideally, maybe just as strong, if not stronger. And I think that's a good thing. I think we need to see more of that. And isn't it funny, because we see so many young men today, and it's like I'm not going to say that I was like this paragon of masculinity when I was a young man. And circumstances kind of caused me to be the way I was, and it took me many years to reconcile that. But I see so many young men, I'm like, come on, guys, you're like a bucket of warm white milk anymore. And I've used that phrase many times.
Well, this goes back to a conversation I was having with a mutual friend about how he was saying when he found out how you proposed to me, essentially asking me if you wanted me to marry you on the day you met me. And he's like, oh, that's so disrespectful. And I said, hell no, that's damn sexy. Like, I do not understand these women that get creeped out if a man goes up to them and it's like, wow, you're attractive. I would like to date you. And this whole idea where men feel like they have to become friends first so they don't creep a girl out. And it's like, just be honest. No, I don't want to be your friend. I would like to find out if you're wife material.
Well, I used to use this phrase. You have to be friends before you can be lovers, but you can only be lovers until after you're married. Now, I wasn't saying you need to be friend zoned like that, but what I was meaning to say, and probably I'm going to I haven't said that in a long time, and I kind of don't agree with it anymore. But there is a sense where you need to get to know each other. You have to be able to be, like
we'll get to know each other, but in the auspices of we are dating.
We're dating.
And that's the thing.
I want to go somewhere.
This friend was saying, again, you can't even date a person until you've been casual because that's seen as too hard of a come on.
Yeah.
And these young women want to be able to have their cake and eat it too. They only want a man to be attracted to them on their own terms. It's like, well, don't notice me that I'm hot and beautiful until I'm ready for you to notice me. And it's like, well, that's horribly unfair. How does a man even engage or initiate a relationship with that being the case? So bringing this kind of back to the Little Mermaid and how there's another point. You're saying, Ursula stealing the Triton, stealing that symbol of masculinity. I mean, we all know men who are pussy whipped, right? Yeah. Where the woman has essentially stolen the masculine seat of power in the relationship. And any woman, if she was truly honest with herself, no woman respects a pussy whipped man. Well, we want the man to be the strong one. We want him to be the assertive one. We want him to be the head of the household.
Not an asshole, but like somebody who's like, no, I'm the head of the household. I'm asserting my authority. I'm asserting my, in a positive way. And
that's what's so frustrating. I see all these commercials where they try to show the man as the one who's staying home and taking care of the kids, and the wife's out working the 9 to 5, which is fine. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but it does send the message that somehow, we have subverted those traditional, family roles where the father is the provider. And there is a sense, and I'll be perfectly honest, I wonder if these women that have to go out and work do resent their husbands in a lot of cases because they can't stay home and raise their kids and, kind of get to do that more traditional thing where when we sort of did our quick little social study and we asked a bunch of young women, if you had an older man come up to you and say, hey, instead of you having to climb the corporate ladder and work the 9 to 5, I'll marry you. You can be a stay-at-home mom and wife, and I'll provide for you. Huh. And most of the women are like, heck yeah, I want to do that. Huh. I mean, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. I don't relish having to go to a 9 to 5 or wait tables or sit in front of a computer all day. I'd much rather cook and clean and tend my own castle, if you will, which is what we get to do pretty much every day.
Sure.
And so, again, Ursula stealing that is again the traditional household where the mother woman figure becomes larger than life and subverts the masculine role in the household.
What do you suppose? Just for funsies, I think I don't know how much more time we've got on this. What are we clocking in at? Oh wow, we can go on. Well, what the hell? We're not 37 minutes. But what do you suppose would have happened if Ursula won? Like, do you think she would have been like? I mean, I'm going to use this terrible term, a MILF type of deal. Like, so Ursula wins. Eric just completely he's like, you know what? I'm going to go for this facade of a woman who, let's be honest, the more you got to put on all the makeup, all the fakery, all the nonsense, and she's got to, he's just going to be with this facade of a woman who's not real anymore. She's just this monster. He marries her. Ariel turns back into a mermaid, so she's like this perpetual child for the rest of her life because she loses.
Forever 19
or 16 or however what she was. And I can't think of a more unbearable hell than being a teenager.
I do not understand people who think their glory days were high school.
Oh, my goodness.
Life is so much better after 35.
Oh, yeah. It's well, I think life is better. Life can be better the next day because you have the opportunity to learn from what you did the previous day. And well, anyways, that's a tangent. But what do you think? What? Let's not go down that tangent. But what do you think would have happened if Ursula won?
Well, first off, her objective wasn't to marry Prince Eric. Her objective was to steal King Trident's trident.
Right.
That was the whole thing. Okay. She wanted his power.
Okay.
So she got it, and if she had not been stopped, well, what happens when a black hole continues to absorb everything? You literally have abnegation of life itself.
Okay.
And that is what happens with the toxic mother. It's literally like Ungoliant eating the 2 trees in Valinor.
Oh, dear.
You want to absorb the light and the life all around you until there is nothing.
We just got serious. We're getting into the Lord of the Rings territory now.
Yeah. So Ursula, I mean, she had literally started, I don't know if you remember from the movie, she created this giant whirlpool that was sucking everything in.
Interesting.
She wanted literally to reabsorb back into her because remember, the toxic mother cannot stand her children leaving. So she wants to grasp with her tentacles to bring back in. And so had Ursula won, everything, it was Ragnarok. right? The wolf eats the sun, and
Yeah.
we're dead.
See,
Everything's gone.
you know,
Everything's reabsorbed back into primeval chaos.
I'm suddenly reminded of this because not looking at the Disney-fied versions, because I actually remember growing up not. I really didn't watch a lot of Disney movies growing up. Aladdin, as far as I'm concerned, was like the best.
Aladdin was pretty good.
Aladdin was the best. Like, and I'm not talking about the live. I'm talking about that, and that was actually the first one I think they did CGI in. But for me, Aladdin was always the best one. But generally speaking, I didn't grow up watching Disney movies. I really didn't.
See, I was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Like we watched all of them every time a new one came out. You know, we would add the VHS to our collection.
I mean, I mean, of course, I've seen a few. I mean, but Aladdin was one I saw. I think I've seen Aladdin more times than I can count. I saw The Lion King a handful of times. I think. Don't divorce me. I think I've only seen The Little Mermaid like once.
I mean, to be fair, it's not exactly one that little boys would probably go for. I mean, mermaids do tend to appeal more to young girls than young boys.
But here's the thing. Remember, and I've told you this many times, and for everybody listening, they're going to learn this about me. I was raised on stories. And so for me, I was always watching Twilight Zone. I was always watching Amazing Stories. And
you'd watched Twilight as well.
Yeah, well, you know, and my dad also had Soul Plane in our collection. So I'm open to a lot of things. Wow, that was a terrible movie. But it was interesting. It was definitely a inventive movie. But the interesting thing is that I'm more familiar with Hans Christian Andersen. I'm more familiar with the Grimm fairy tales, Grimm Brothers Grimm, Aesop's Fables. It's another one that a lot of people don't talk about too much anymore. And the more I'm starting to listen to this, I'm thinking more and more back to Hans Christian Andersen, The Snow Queen, which I think Frozen was very
loosely based. But there was actually a cartoon. I don't think Disney did it. I remember watching as a small child about the Snow Queen, which I think was exactly from the Hans Christian Andersen tale.
The Hallmark Channel actually did a lot of those old fairy tales, and they did them so much better as the live action because they actually stuck with the story. But you do see this kind of concept of like motherhood and toxic motherhood kind of recycling itself over and over. You saw it in the Snow Queen, kind of saw it in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Of course, that's not Hans Christian Andersen.
Cinderella and the jealous stepmother.
Cinderella, yeah. And it's fascinating because it's almost always that positive male figure. It's not so much saving the woman from herself, but saving the woman from an evil, overbearing, manipulative mother.
Can you think of any fairy tale where the mother is either present or not evil?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think. I mean, well, I guess. Let's see. Snow White, no. Cinderella, no. Sleeping Beauty, no.
Well, no, in Sleeping Beauty, you have the king and queen were there, so they're there. I mean, they don't really play much of a role other than, oh no, our daughter fell asleep.
Okay.
Whatever shall we do? So they're kind of, both parents are rendered impotent,
inert,
which maybe we could do a whole one on the symbolism in Sleeping Beauty.
We'll have to watch it again.
Bambi's mother gets shot.
Dies.
Ariel's.
Ironic. What is our one friend said? How many strippers are named Bambi? And Bambi's a guy's name.
I mean, I don't know any strippers named Bambi, but
I don't.
Maybe you do.
I don't know. No, I don't know any. Of course, you know this.
I mean, I don't know. Who you know or talk to?
Yes, you do. You know everybody I know and talk to. Don't make up lies.
All your internet friends.
Yeah, my three
named
internet
Bambi.
Friends. Yeah, Bambi. I don't have any internet friends named Bambi.
John, why are you getting a phone call from Bambi 69?
Thanks. Thank you. But my three internet friends, I can name them all on my top of my head, and two of them were actually marginally famous.
But I don't think mother figures are represented positively or at all in most fairy tales. I mean, even in The Lion King, I don't. I mean, we don't really hear much from Simba's mom. I mean, I don't think she's dead, but she's not really an active figure that much. I mean, she kind of gets easily taken over when Scar comes along. I mean, but The Lion King is just Hamlet told with lions.
Right.
So,
yeah, well, even the Northman that we just saw, the mother was awful.
oh yeah,
She was
she
terrible.
arranged the whole thing so that
Spoilers.
what's that?
Spoilers.
Yeah. I mean,
It's Hamlet.
I mean, she literally called him Amleth.
Amleth, yeah.
And then everyone at the end is like, it was just Hamlet. And everyone's like, what? I'm like, they literally called him Amleth.
It didn't click for me. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking about
It's
it.
okay. But no, so maybe
yeah.
maybe motherhood is not portrayed well in like Germanic Norse fairy tales.
It's always those Germans, man.
Just because maybe the propensity for toxic motherhood is so easy
Right.
to, and because a lot of fairy tales have to do with, again, that self-differentiation,
Right.
that actualizing into adulthood, or they're teaching you some type of moral or lesson.
Hansel and Gretel. Yeah, they didn't have a mother either. It was the woodman.
Well, I don't remember in
I don't
Hansel
think
and
they had a
Gretel.
father.
But again,
I mean,
I think that just goes to show that when motherhood is done poorly,
Right.
that the repercussions are, again, you end up with this bloated octopus who's stolen a
Right.
trident and is literally consuming everything. And then it takes the strong male spouse husband archetype to come in and deflate that and pierce it and steal the girl away from the primordial chaos, giant whirlpool of chaos, and bring them into adulthood and make a life together.
And that's the important thing. And both men and women.
Just like you did with me.
Aw. Well, hey, you feed me and you take care of me too, so it's a two-way street. But no, we complement each other, and that's the important thing.
You leave chaos, I clean it up.
Oh, let's talk about we're not going to talk about your chaos for a minute, but
You leave my kitchen alone.
you're right. And that little soap dish, man, I don't know how it happens.
I put it right back in place.
Yep, after it's been moved. Anyways,
Caddy Wampus soap.
and the hand towel and just anyways. But yeah, so it is very fascinating, and I think that was and I'm really thankful that we got to talk about this, because when you brought this up, I really wanted to record it. I really wanted to get like a sense of like, I thought that was important to capture. Now, offhand, I can't think that I've ever read that anywhere else on the internet, or like fan theories, or
Specifically about the Little Mermaid?
yeah.
No, as far
I'm
as
sure
I know,
somebody has. So just
sure.
just like a disclaimer, like
yeah.
as far as we know, I don't think. I didn't really bother to look it up either.
As far as I know, this is completely original to me. But again, it was springboarding off of how Jordan Peterson did
Right.
take the story of Pinocchio and kind of explain sort of the archetypal things going on. So it's not too far of a leap in logic to say, hey, what other fairy tales and children's stories? I mean, again, especially because there almost always was a lesson.
Right.
These things weren't told purely for entertainment, although that was part of it. But they were also told to teach a lesson.
Yeah, no, there was some kind of valuable lesson, and just as much as society is on this notion of toxic masculinity, which is just nonsense. I granted, yes, some guys are just out of their damn minds. I'm not going to dispute that, but man, some of these women too are just like emotion.
No, let's talk about toxic femininity.
Yeah.
Let's talk about toxic motherhood. Let's
Lord.
talk about these things and recognize that both men and women are flawed and can
Absolutely.
fail big time
Sure.
in their roles as parents.
And you see that, I think, so much. Toxic masculinity is easy. It's toxic masculinity is just masculinity run amok, realistically speaking. That's what it is. It's this, the same virtue that would cause a man to run to a burning building to sacrifice his life for his friends and loved ones is the same, can easily be turned into a vice. It's coming from the same source. It's not the masculinity that's the problem. It's how you're using it. But motherhood is an interesting one, because it's almost like this innate defense mechanism of saying, this is a beautiful, cute thing, and there's a study that was done. It's like we always put sympathy towards these cute, beautiful things because we don't want it to, it's like we don't want to hurt the cute, beautiful thing, And I think that's why a lot of people, it's like when you see some of these teachers, it's like, wow, she's really pretty or whatever. It's like, can't believe she did that. You kind of start to wonder if there's a little bit of leniency in that because the person is attractive. And there's been some studies done that suggest that the more attractive you are, the more you can get away with things.
Yeah, I've heard that. But think about
Yeah.
it too. You say, with masculinity, the same traits that allow a man to run into a burning building can also be used to abuse.
Sure.
Well, with motherhood, the same arms that hold and embrace in love and protection can also hold to restrain
And smother.
and smother. And again, going back to the fact that Ursula was an octopus with these arms, these arms
Right.
can hold and protect, but they can also restrain and smother. And
Right.
again, ultimately, what Ursula did, try to literally absorb and bring back again to that, that symbolic, archetypal, primeval chaos that was the ocean. Again, I think again, there's the deep symbolism
Yeah.
of being in the ocean where life came from, and now we're trying to bring everything back to that primordial chaos. Where God separated the waters in the Hebrew tohu vabohu. The chaos and the darkness, which is interesting. One more quick thought that a lot of mythologies and origin stories of the universe from different pagan mythologies usually have some type of chaotic primordial monster that has to be overcome
Right.
before life can flourish. And oftentimes that's what mothers run amok can become. Toxic mothers, they become the primordial monster
Right.
that doesn't allow life and that does the opposite.
And I would actually add to that, talking about those archetypes. That's why so many people don't understand something like yin and yang. Yin and yang are not opposing forces. And I hate the fact that they're like, oh, there's a little good and evil and a little evil and good. It's like, that is such an idiotic way of looking at yin and yang. It's talking about balance of powers. It's talking about complementary forces that work together in unison. Not good and evil. No. Good, not good and evil. Not order and chaos. But male and female. I guess you could say light and darkness in a sense, not the same like good evil like darkness, but
I don't think it was ever meant to mean like morally good and morally bad. It was just more opposite and opposing. But when worked together,
they
coming together to form the whole. And what do we see in the Little Mermaid? We see, again, the mother figure, they're grown to gigantic proportions from stealing masculinity,
right?
Them not working together. But then we see Ariel and Prince Eric. This is what happens when you do, right? They live happily ever after. And so on and so forth.
And that's the thing, and it is good. And I guess we should. I could comment about yin and yang for a while because the thing is that if a balance is good, and for something like a yin and yang, that male female balance is disrupted, it is chaotic and disorderly, and it disrupts the balance, and that is evil. And that's why I don't think it falls into that, that harmonious balance thing. That God, man, we're designed to have that balance.
When both men and women can get out of balance,
Absolutely.
leading to toxic masculinity or toxic femininity.
Absolutely.
So there you have it.
There you go.
The Little Mermaid as an allegory about toxic motherhood and young women trying to self-actualize into adulthood through the power of matrimony.
And I will say I've enjoyed being married. It's been delightful. It's been wonderful, I think. And I love my wife. She's pretty. You hear me speak about her
I love
a
you
lot.
too.
Oh, hey, there we go. But no, it's wonderful because this is what I get to do all day long. I get to talk to my wife. We get to philosophize about these things, and only what I speak about on these podcasts are only a small snippet of those things. I hope this turns out well. I'm using a new method, so for all my 3 listeners out there, but it's fun to think about things. It's fun to just kind of
idly speculate.
I'm sure there's some guy out there who doesn't like idle speculation, but we're not going to mention his name, but it's fun to think about. Does this mean that it is? Who knows? But it's something fun to think about. Anyways, I think we've run our course for the evening. I want to say thank you for taking the time. My wife, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for letting me do this. This was fun.
And it's going to cause me to want to buy more things because now I need a microphone stand and I need a fuzzy thing so that way I'm not holding this thing as close to it. The playback's going to sound terrible. I hope not. But thank you, wife, for taking the time to speak with me, to talk with me, to share your thoughts. And now we have them recorded in time. So, folks, until next time, I want to say thank you very much. Good day. And as always, God bless.